Well, hello, everybody. How is everybody today? Everybody good?
Yep.
Excellent.
Excellent.
My name is Kathryn Furrow, and I'm with the Acting for Your Life program, and I'll be moderating with Jake today. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking because I know you guys have some questions, and we're going to talk to Jake about his career in life and all of that kind of cool stuff. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Tell us how you got into the acting industry and how you started, because it was way before episode 1.
Yeah, it was. I started when I was I wanted to get into the acting industry when I was 2 because of Terminator 2, which was cool because I got to work with Arnold, so that was particularly awesome. Mm-hmm. And my mom was still in college, and she was quite young when she had me. And she transferred schools to LA and told me that she got fed up with my begging one day because she didn't want me to be an actor at all. She was like, "No, I don't want you to end up like other not mentioned child actors." And Boop. And she told me that if I could find my way to LA, if I could find a way to get to LA, because we lived in Ventura at the time. She was at USC Santa Barbara, and if we could find a way to get to LA, she'd take me. And so I did one of those Star Search things. I got a commercial, and
fantastic.
Then I found a really good agent, Cindy Osbrink, who's my godmother now. So we got really, really lucky with that, and got to meet some really great people right off the bat. So
very cool. And so what led up to Star Wars? So you did some television first. You did ER.
Yeah, I did ER. I did
The Pretender. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. I did ER, Pretender. I did 80 commercials in about 5 years.
Wow.
Which has got to be annoying for everyone watching television. Looking back on it, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was in all these commercials, and then Star Wars
came off the TV.
Then Star Wars came out, and I just like, what the heck? Come on. I've done a fair amount of work. I did 4 movies, 5 if you count one really awful TV movie.
And which was that, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm not saying.
Okay. Done.
But that's going to be a cult classic.
No. It does not have the makings of a cult classic.
A B movie?
No, it was a made-for-TV movie. It was definitely like a straight-to-Walmart sort of thing.
We'll just let that one lie there and keep moving.
Yeah, that would be best. But yeah, I've done quite a bit of work. In the last 7 years or so since I left school, I've been a freelance editor, and I'm writing a book and editing a documentary. So.
Very cool. Where did you go to school for editing? So you were in Chicago, film
yeah,
school, right?
I went to Columbia of Chicago for a little while. I didn't finish, but I decided that I could probably make it on my own. We had family issues too, so I had to go, and some personal stuff that I had to deal with, so I kind of took off and dealt with that stuff. And in the meantime, I started a career in Indiana.
Yeah.
So, and boy, am I looking forward to that coming to an end.
And moving on, and we'll leave that one lie. And
Greener pastures.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, tell us, because we were talking about this before everybody got here, and this is a question that people are going to have. What was the audition process like for episode 1?
I auditioned for 2 years before I was cast. And I went in every 6 months or so, and then they had the screen test, which they showed in the documentary and stuff, and that was stressful. They had to sign so much paperwork for that, because it was actually stuff from the script, and they didn't want any of it leaking out, and there was a stack of paper that was this big, and they were like, initial here, sign here, initial here, sign here. And we spent 5 minutes going through paperwork before we could even go into the screen test and start the whole thing. It was pretty intense. I'd never had to do something like that for an audition, and that was very intense. But anyways, we the the auditioning process was basically go in, meet Robin Gerland, talk for a little while. I was initially too young, too short, still am too short, and certainly not too young. But she just kind of check in on me, and we'd go over and we'd talk about Star Wars stuff, and I was huge into the originals before they were re-released. I loved the metaphysical philosophy in it. I loved I think it's really important that Disney pick it up, because children kind of need to see that sort of concept, the Buddhist sort of metaphysical concept that they allow in Star Wars, and the sort of Eastern philosophy of like we're all connected, and it helps you deal with your mind a lot. And when you're thinking about if you have the ability to think about mind over matter, and it makes days where you're, as a kid, it made days for me where that weren't so great just seem a lot better, because I try to find balance as opposed to try to make it good.
Yeah.
And it was all right, because it's very karmic and stuff like that. So it made me, it helped a lot when I was a kid, and I was thrilled to be part of it. And it's still a very important part of my philosophy, and like even spiritual belief at this point, when it comes to the metaphysical ramifications of it. So, because I'm huge into that.
What was it like to be a kid with that kind of an imagination and those sort of very early foundational beliefs, to be a part of a film or a process where you got to just totally immerse yourself into that world? That's
a fair point. As for actors especially, you deal with a lot of your primary tool is emotion, and emotion is a metaphysical concept anyways. It's real, it's tangible, it's very tactile to the right person, and you can definitely do things in your craft as an actor to hone that. And a lot of that is mind over matter. Yes, it's like building a complex of it's like building a psychological complex that you don't need, but at the same time, it's very rewarding to get the experiences from your own sensation and your own sensory experiences, and dealing with people interpersonally to actually be able to manifest an emotion and actually be able to do that on cue is very much a mind over matter and Zen thing. It's fantastic. It's a terrific craft when you're looking to be stable in mind, and I know we don't see it often, but I always loved it for that, and it brought me a lot of peace and joy and satisfaction, which is all I can really ask for.
Yeah. Were you intimidated at all with the actors that you were surrounded by with the film? Did it just...
I was intimidated by the sets. You walk onto a Star Wars set, and it's real. It's as real as it can get. And the first day I showed up on set, I was with Ahmed, and we were both like, what are we doing here? Like, do we belong here? Ahmed and he's like, I just got off a stomp. And I'm like, dude, best thing I've done is Jingle All the Way. And he's like, dude, I know what you mean. Come on. Meanwhile, you have Natalie Portman and Liam Neeson and Ewan and all phenomenal actors. And even Ahmed's a great actor. And you've got this crew that is so tight-knit and professional and really intensely just amazing. And then there's George Lucas standing over there, Rick McCallum. And
no pressure.
Yeah, and you just kind of like, okay, the set was enough for me. The set was plenty. What are you guys doing here?
Do you compare with the type of work that you're doing now, especially with editing and the acting projects that followed or even before that, do you compare the Star Wars experience to any of the other experiences? Is it hard not to compare it, or is it another Zen thing that...
Yeah, it doesn't affect me whatsoever. I'm kind of a Mr. Fix-It when it comes to my editing career. Like, for the documentary, he has 130 hours of footage, and he hasn't been able to... He was just like, I haven't been able to find an editor who's willing to tackle this. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. We went to military school together. We're good friends, and he's actually editing the book that I'm writing. And I was just like, okay, yeah, just give me final say on a rough cut, not the final cut, just a rough cut, so that I can just toy with this and make it work, and then we'll go from there. And he's like, okay, thank you.
What is it about editing that you like so much? What's drawn you to editing?
It's another Zen thing, pattern and repetition in your everyday life. It's why you read Buddhist books and stuff where they have the child who wants to learn to be Zen sweep. It's why Luke and Anakin are forced to do repetitive tasks and stuff and meditate and hone and do these things over and over again, and why impatience and change and volatility are looked at with such inhospitable eyes. It's for me, editing is pattern and repetition, and it's timing, and it's just being in tune with someone else's work and their appreciation or view of the world. And when you get to a point in your life where you appreciate others more than yourself, or just start out that way.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
You tend to want to make them look as good as possible. And having the experiences I've had, watching the movies I've watched, being on the sets that I have, it's very easy for me to come in and just be like, all right, this shot where it's good will not be good for your film, because of this, and this, and so I can look through a lot of his footage and be like, this shot's great, this interview's great, but unfortunately you will be saying too much in too little time, and no one's going to get it. And, the appreciation one gains from watching films, I suppose, you and I kind of talked about this, is that the importance of the film industry is the third largest industry in the nation, and I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me, but it's a huge industry, and it's imperative, if more people were to get into it, we'd just have more fun, and I think editing in particular and filmmaking is such a collaborative art form. It brings so many different types of artists and ideas together that that's amazing. It's amazing. So when I get the chance to see the final work or final footage of someone's documentary, like I did with this Tibetan refugee movie, it's just phenomenal for me. Like I've done corporate videos and stuff, and even that's amazing. You see guys go out and they shoot all day. It's impressive they even get stuff shot at this point, and I don't think a lot of people realize that the amount of effort it takes to make a movie. They see the documentary, and they think they get a gist of it, but they're leaving a lot of stuff out. They're leaving out the fact that one PA overslept that day, and it cost them like 3 hours of work,
That never happens.
Or the producer was late because of a business call because he was trying to find financing for that day,
for that day in particular.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're $10 million over budget, or stuff like that, and no one mentions that in their documentaries that they release with the movies, and you run into this problem all the time with independent films, and even with the corporate films and stuff I do, like training videos and stuff. It's just amazing that people even get this stuff made. So I'm like humbled to be here, where people have successfully accomplished so much, especially in so little time with so little budget, to have made such outstanding films. It's really, really impressive.
So you saw a lot of the films, or did you see all of the films last night?
I saw all of them in one of the screening rooms.
Okay.
I couldn't be in both places at the same time. It's a Zen thing I'm working on, but I can't seem to do it.
No Jedi mind trick that you can use to separate your body, or
I'm having trouble with it. It's just I'm working on it. I'll get around to it, but focusing on two things at the same time just seems so difficult. Much less being there in two different places at the same time.
I think it's really interesting, and you had mentioned this a little bit earlier today, and just the process of making any sort of art, and film in particular, that you auditioned for 2 years before you got the part, and that sometimes audiences are not aware of that process, that films can take years and years and years and years to come to fruition, and then for an actor especially to go through that process and to, come
Yeah.
back every 6 months or so.
And they're like, you still auditioning me for a reason,
Yeah.
or do you just want to talk to me for
Yeah.
5 minutes?
Do you
What
just-
is this?
We'll go out for coffee if you just
Come
like
on,
me.
let's go. Are you hungry?
Make you a sandwich.
Make me a sandwich.
Some people can audition for 2 years and still not get the part.
It's true. Well, how do you handle it? And that's a great point. How do you, as an actor, I know for me that's something I really had to learn how to deal with, that the whole idea, this is a business basically of rejection, and so that when you actually
Yeah.
do get the part, you get to celebrate. But how do you handle it? How did you, as an actor and as an editor, when you're going for a project or when you're looking for funding or whatever, how do you handle that stress of the process?
Rejection?
Yeah. What do you mean rejection?
No, rejection's great, because to be quite honest, if they didn't want to work with you, it's probably for a good reason. If you're doing what you should be doing, you're being professional, you have a good project, it's creative, it's original, blah, 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 then you probably won't get turned down too much by the right kind of people. And you know that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
When you're making a period piece and you go out and you go, okay, we still need like I'm assuming more like $8 million for this film. And you need to find it like one penny at a time. And you get to the point where you're just knocking on doors. And I'd rather knock on doors and tell people, and not be like, show up and be like, hi, I'm Anakin Skywalker.
You need the helmet.
Thanks for
Remember
bringing
me?
that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyways, I'd rather show up and just be like, look, I've got an investment opportunity and it's really bad. It's independent film. You shouldn't invest in it, which is in a lot of the standardized contracts for independent films, is that you really do. It does warn you against the investment. And
Which I think is hysterical and also awesome at the same time.
yeah, it's great.
Don't give me money, but give me money.
Because you're like, read through this, skip this, but read through this. And they read it and you look at them and you're like, well, basically what you're doing is a donation. Yes, it can pay off. No, I can't guarantee that it will. But yes, I would duly appreciate it. And then you start talking about your project, and you start talking about getting funding for that specifically, or your production company. It doesn't matter. You could be talking to your local realtor or whatever you want to say, or a steel mill guy, and you could be talking to whoever you want about these things, and it doesn't matter. You could be talking to your next door neighbor. But if they don't want to get involved by the time you're done telling them the nitty-gritty of your project, it doesn't matter if you're a good salesman or not. What matters is what you're selling. And if they're not buying what you're selling, especially when it comes to your own creative work, and they reject you, screw them. It's your creative work. It's your life's work at that point. As far as you know, your entire life has been building up to be doing something original, creative, and different, and something that people can appreciate by and large. So why does it matter if they reject you at all? If they reject you, then great. You should move on to the next person who doesn't. It's just like auditioning. I got turned down for more roles than I got. I went on hundreds upon hundreds of auditions, and I got turned down for a huge amount of them. And that's great, because I did what I did. I'm happy having done what I did. And every once in a while you get to the point where you get to reject people too, so that's fun. But, it's just, rejection's just a fact of life, and if you can't live life without loving a little rejection, then you can't love life. So
That's a fantastic quote. I mean, and it's true. One step closer every time you go through that process to getting close to working to the people that you're supposed to be working with.
yeah,
Very
Yeah.
good.
And you don't want them on set anyways.
Yeah.
If they're going to be a nuisance, then just go away.
That's true. That's very true.
The only thing I don't like about rejection is, like you said, it took you 2 years to get to Star Wars, if you're gonna get rejected, why couldn't you, like, the first time you go in, get rejected? If you're gonna get the part, then yeah, it takes however long, but why, it really hurts when it takes like 3-4 years out of your life, and then you get rejected. It's like,
But
you wasted for nothing. Why can't they just reject you on day one instead of day 1 million?
A lot of that has to do with the film process, don't you think, of just finding the right people for the right
yeah,
entities?
they went through 3,000 different kids for that role, and I agree. I think that it's unfortunate that I still don't know why in particular I was chosen, but I imagine that they had plenty of reason to be chosen, just like me, and it's unfortunate that we couldn't make 3,000 films at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd rather see a lot of child actors in work than not.
Yeah.
Like-
Little spin-offs, 3,000 spin-offs.
Yeah,
to say, yeah.
well, we've got J.J. Abrams now, so you never know.
I would just assume that in that 2-year process, even though you're getting called back for casting calls, you know, I know other people have talked about the first one is always like a cattle call.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
keeping those 3,000 kids down, so you're being exposed to different parts of the casting process. So even
Yeah.
if it's repetitive, you're dealing with different people, and people higher up the food chain. So I would imagine there's learning and exposure there that's valuable.
Yeah, there's sitting in a waiting room with like 10 other kids.
Who look just like you.
No, well,
In some instances, or no?
no one looks like me. Anyways, no, sitting in a room with 10 other kids, and you're all rehearsing your lines, you know, and we're kids, so it's usually a parent who's there with you, so that's a little embarrassing, but at the same time, you're like, well, I can own it. And you're rehearsing your lines, and everyone's kind of, it's just little, like, it's just muffled, and you're talking about things, and we got to the point where we'd show up and we'd just be quiet and, like, try to talk to each other as opposed to stare at the other kids. Like, because when you first show up at those things and you see 10 other kids who are have just as much potential as infinite, you know, you just see an infinite amount of what could go wrong. Yeah, you know? and a lot of this person can do just as well as I can. So, and I can do just as well as them. So, I guess it's you know, you're backing your own dog in the fight, and it's very awkward, very awkward. Even discussing it's awkward because I found that a lot of the kids were really good. In the book I'm writing, I told this story and I posted it up on my fan page of this kid who, his mom like hit him. Like,
oh my gosh.
hit him in the like in the waiting room for the auditioning. And that kid didn't want to act a day in his life, you know? And she was just threatening him, and then she just like smacked him upside the head, and like it was just so ridiculous that parents would be more concerned about themselves than their own child. And that when that PA came out and was like, all right, you're up, that kid put on the best performance I've ever seen in my life. Wow. Being happy and walking into that room, you know. Like, and there's not much you can do about it in the situation, because I think my mom talked to her while her son was in there and was like, listen, if I ever see you again.
Go mom.
And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of variety in the amount in actors and in the choices that directors and casting agents will make, and you're just as likely to get picked as anyone else. It's just kind of a whim thing for directors because they're the most creatively
unique.
No, I was going to go ADD.
I think that's accurate too. Yeah.
They're the most creatively ADD people on the planet. You know, they're like, they get fixated on one thing and they're like, this is great, and then pretty bird.
Squirrel.
Yeah. So and I love them, and I'm a director, and I do the same thing, because a kid will walk in, like if a kid walks into me and I'm sitting there looking for him for a music video or something, and I'll talk to him, I'll have him do his thing, and if I don't like them, it's, you treat them as best you can. Sometimes you don't get treated well when you go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's just a casting director, it's always, how hard is it? How hard is it when they can't read lines?
Yeah.
All right?
And you want to go, look, let me just guide you through this real quick. Well, let's switch scripts.
And, like, you're being recorded, and you're like, oh, my God, this is going in front of the director. And this chick across from me is sitting there going, and so I was, and you're like, oh, my God, come on. Give me something to work with.
Yeah. It is tough. It is definitely tough. And especially when you, and just your energy and how you are as a person.
Yeah.
Wanting that response from the other, wanting to, like, engage, and when they don't, I mean, when a lot of your audition is like this.
Listen.
Yeah. Wake up. What other questions do we have from folks out there for Jake?
We were kind of talking about rejection a while ago, and there's a lot of big Hollywood stories about, like Will Smith was going to play in The Matrix and things like that. Was there ever like a role that you really wanted or you were up for that you never got, and in an alternate universe you're playing that character? Not really.
No, I was lucky enough to be in Jingle All the Way in Star Wars alone, so like and once I did Madison and I decided to go to school and be a normal kid and learn and go to college and do all that fun, amazing academia stuff that I did not do so well with. Not for lack of trying, but just because I believe in see students rule the world. I've been offered some role. I told you guys, I told the MayDay guys about this the other day when we were first showing up. Disney kept wanting me for a role in whatever script. They'd call me up every year and they'd be like, we have a new script, have Jake read it, see if he likes it. Disney movies of the 90s and early 2000s were not that, or shows, which mainly they wanted me to be in TV, which I did not want to do a Disney TV show. And it wasn't because they're bad, it was just because I don't like the idea of being tied to a contract and being on set every day for 6 years. Mm-hmm. Like, that sounds like hell to me. As much as I love being on set, not so great if you're there every day for 6 years. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to get burnt out and like lose passion for something I loved, and I figured that would be the quickest way to do it.
And television is such a different dynamic, even from film. I mean, it's a totally different
And Disney
monster.
TV is particularly different.
But on the mouse ears.
Yeah, exactly. I just didn't, I couldn't do it, and they kept calling, and finally, I think like when I was 10, they were like, all right, we've got the best script we've been able to put together for him. He's gonna love this, have him read it. We didn't like it. And they kept calling my agent going, how much will it take to, this is the opposite side of rejection, which rocks.
Take notes, everybody. Here we go.
No, don't take notes on this. This was this is horribly unprofessional, and they got really angry. And it's really funny that they own Star Wars now, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to renew my residual contract. And but they kept calling, and every time they'd call, they'd be like, how much will it take? And they were like, I'm sorry, he's not interested. We've got other things going on. And they'd say something else every time, and they'd just be like, look, we can't do this. And finally, they go, give us a number. And they pulled me into the office, my agent's office, and they were like, Jake, what's the biggest number you can think of? And I was like, 16 billion. Like, they answered the phone, and they was like, he'll do it for 16 billion. They were like, he'll never work in this industry again.
How old were you?
I was like 9. Yeah. And they were like, sorry, that's how much he wants. And like, the Star Wars was about to come out, and they were like, and it was just, so if you do your job long enough in any career, I'd hope, I'd hope that in any career you get to the point where you have the ability to tell either your boss or the person next to you to
Have a nice day.
yes,
That's what you mean.
please
Have a
leave me
nice
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and even if, yeah, so it's I got that in a big way, and I'm always grateful for moments like that, or booking a job, or even just sitting at home alone editing a documentary and compiling footage and organizing it, because you can't take for granted any aspect of life, otherwise you're taking something for granted and it'll bite you in the ass.
Where did your sense of grounding come from? Because not every actor that I've worked with or talked to or interviewed has such a good concept of who they are as a person and kind of
Oh, I have no
their
concept of
roles.
who I am.
Which might make it work, which might be the key here. But
No,
where did that come from for you?
My mother.
Yeah.
My mother, my godmother, my sister. My sister keeps me in check like nothing else.
Older sister or younger sister?
Younger sister.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. When we used to bicker in the backseat of the car, because we would drive all the time in LA to go to auditions and stuff, my mom would ground us together. She would force us to be together for longer periods of time than we ever wanted. And eventually we just started plotting against my mother. And
So you bonded on a deep level.
on a
yes.
very deep level. So now whenever Madison's over and my mom's sitting there going, oh my God, they're going to hassle me so bad. What have I created? And we get along great.
So her plan worked.
Yeah, but you know, we come from my sister's actually the first person in my entire family to graduate from college.
Wow.
You know, she just graduated from Pepperdine with a degree in film, and because you know we like to stick to film in the family. It's been good to us, so we like to give back. Is the idea?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been really really good to us. People have been good to us. The people in the film industry can be good, and it's nice to be able to say, this is what I love. This is what I'm gonna do. Let's do it. You know, and it's one of the reasons why I in my very first interview on my Twitch channel, we talked about non-industrial financing. You know, going outside of banks or even just industry professionals and entertainment industry professionals to find financing, because it's imperative that independent filmmakers get to make their movies.
Yeah.
You know, I saw some of the best stuff I've seen in years yesterday. You know,
That's
one
fantastic.
film in particular was just phenomenal, and it was only it felt like 5 minutes. It was great, and it was no budget, and it was done in a day. And it's imperative that these guys get their feelings across. And you know, you can't go into the film industry or any industry for that matter expecting something for yourself. You know, the reason I liked being an actor when I was younger was because I felt like because I felt it was important to give as much as I could. You know, and as an actor, you are someone else's pawn. You know, you are entirely at the whims and mercies of the director and the actor across from you. You know, and you just have to roll with it and do your best job.
Yeah.
And I think if you can get a hold of that in you, then you're probably a lot better off and will be more marketable.
Than anything else. I heard a question, or the start of a question.
Some of the best stuff don't get made just because of money.
Exactly, and it's a shame, but it's well, you also have stuff like Brokeback Mountain, which sat on the shelf of Universal Studios or not one of the studios for 10 years before it got made because it was just culturally impractical.
What other questions do we have out there?
Comment.
Yeah, sure.
Your sister's doing stuff in film too. You two ought to get together and do something.
Oh, we will. Yeah, that's the plan.
I'd like to see it, whatever it is.
What's up?
What memories do you have about Jingle All the Way, works in Harlem, Bill Hartman?
Phil was great. He was a really, really good guy. You know, it was an absolute.
Long ago, but I know you still have some memories, you know.
Yeah, I do. And the problem I've had up until now with sharing memories is that I've gotten the same question over and over again, so it's a little rehearsed. And I typically tell the same stories, so I'm trying to break away from that in general. But I'll stick to Phil Hartman in that And I'll briefly talk about Arnold, but Phil Hartman was one of the, when you talk about a grounded person, comedians of that caliber happen to be some of the best philosophers. And philosophers typically are great people in their own right, as long as their philosophies are sound. And his were. And what happened to him was a tragedy, and he was an incredible man to work with. And as far as being on set with him, he was the utmost professional. He always willing to crack a joke if something was going wrong, and he was always there. He was always present. He was always ready to do his job. And on a set, that means more than the movie itself. Someone who's actually showing up, because he is a big name, and so is Arnold, and he did the same thing. And they were industry professionals as opposed to just movie stars. They actually show up, they do their thing, and they do it right, and they do whatever it takes to get it done. And that, I think, a lot of people have trouble with, especially actors, showing up and recognizing that, okay, today the call sheet says that I have a 6-hour day, and and then realizing, like, 12 hours later they're still there, and they're like, and you're just like, come on, man, it's a movie set, like, get used to it. Or don't.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I'm sure a question you get all the time, yeah. You gonna be in 7, 8, or 9 in Star Wars?
No, and I do get that all the time. I don't want to be, and I think it would be inappropriate. I think it would be really inappropriate for young Anakin to have a cameo later on in the series. It depends on what they call for. If they want me back, then of course I'd be glad to do it for them. I still know a lot of people at Lucasfilm, and I love them like family, and Lucasfilm is great. And if someone from Lucasfilm approached me and said, look, we need you for a scene, I'd just be like, what do you need me to do?
What would you like? You had a question?
I was just going to say, you mentioned a lot about giving back to the industry because it gave you so much. And you mentioned about trying to go after budgets, which I'm sure every indie filmmaker can relate to, trying to get money from people. But
Yeah.
since you played at that level, is your aspiration to someday get back to budgets of tens of millions of dollars, or do you find with kind of the energy or kind of the locality of being able to do independent filmmaking?
Great question.
Did you know I was an editor for the last 7 years? No, not from today, but before today. You knew that I was editing?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was hoping you didn't. Because, I'd rather, I chose a profession that's behind the camera, very much so. Like, no, the shortest scenes in a documentary about a movie is in the editing bay. So I'm just like, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I would love to work on any type of movie. I'm trying to get people from this film festival to come on my show and talk film with me, and I just talked to a couple of other guys who do paranormal web series, maybe showing that on the Twitch channel as well. And I know Ryan's show, we already agreed to air his show, his web series on the channel. And
Very cool.
at the moment, I prefer doing stuff with independent filmmakers locally until I move back to LA, in which case which is going to be within a year or so.
It's all about connecting, though, don't you think?
I agree, and I think that there's a lot of good filmmakers here at this show, and I think a lot of them, it's a mini Hollywood, to quote Ryan. It very much is, and it's impressive in that. And I don't want to see this film festival go anywhere but up. But Ryan's like, no, don't say it. Don't say it.
Take two.
I don't want to see this happen again ever. But yeah, I want to get. I'd like to help offer as much exposure as possible. That's like the only reason I'm here, is that, you know, you bring in a bigger name for a film festival who's, yeah, I emceed and stuff, and yeah, I'm doing the panels, but that's not really, we're not panning for the sake of my pride and posterity, but if you looked at this room, there are not a lot of people here. And the point is that it's a connection thing. They're hoping that I can help them further grow it, which is why we're filming this, you know. And it's imperative to get the fact that they are good enough people to the point where I'd work with them on a level of selling myself to sell them, you know. And
It's giving back. It's the same thing you were talking about when you were younger. You wanted to be able to give
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
precisely.
Yeah, definitely. Any more questions? Let's go to Ryan, and then we'll go to you again. Yeah,
You know, earlier
sure.
you were talking about, you know, I'll never be in 7, 8, 9, but, you know, you and I have talked about this. You like doing voice acting. Would you ever see yourself doing the Star Wars, any of the Star Wars cartoons that they're doing?
That'd be fun. Yeah, that'd be fun. I miss Dara. Dara was the director for a lot of the video games, and I worked with him a lot. And he was
Because you did
really
voice
cool.
acting for the video games.
Yeah, yeah. When I was still of the right age and I didn't sound like this.
Imagine you as like your older self
Yeah.
doing characters.
I think
Doing
we all
young
did. Just
Anakin.
in that moment, it got really quiet. How awkward would that be?
Hey, Padme, are you an angel?
That's pretty awesome. You had another question?
Well, your response kind of made me wonder. It was something I was thinking of earlier when you talked about the casting calls and driving around. But when you're trying to put together a team of people that are trying to support you, you talked about your mom driving you all around and your
Yeah.
management team. When somebody like Disney calls and says, give us a number, and you've got a 9-year-old child saying, I'll do it for $16 billion. How did either that team come about? How did you put it together? How was your mom able to say, you know, I'm schlepping this kid all over Hollywood, and he's got a chance to do a regular gig with Disney, and he's basically poo-pooing on the idea. And also, kind of leading into that, how as an adult, you run into people probably all the time that, again, want to use your fame and are trying to elevate themselves by associating with you. How do you identify people that are really in it,
Oh.
craft like you, versus people that are just trying to use you, I guess?
Wow, that's a 3-part question that really...
Bullet point 1. Boom,
Yeah.
go.
Okay. When it came to putting the team together, I just, like I said, I lucked out and I got Cindy, my agent. Cindy has been the backbone of my career and my go-to person for anything I do creatively. Her son as well, actually. He's an incredibly creative and talented director, Chris Osbrink. He's fantastic. He worked on Get Smart and stuff, and he's great. And I'm actually sounding like him now, which is embarrassing. And that's just because I looked up to him so much.
We're not recording this. Oh.
Oh, snap. And, you know, it's your agent's job to put together other people like management and even find you the right accountant sometimes. You know, they come across more of these things than you do as an actor, because as an actor you get pitches for projects. You don't, however, get pitches for someone who can do your taxes without you going to jail when you turn 18, like almost happened to me. Yeah, it's that Cindy's basically been the backbone of all of that, and the thing about Cindy that makes her so great and such a great agent for children, as well as all of the other clients that she sees now, since her company's grown to huge amounts. She's also oh, never mind. She cares very much more. She cares so much more about the child and their opinion and whether or not they're having fun, to the point where she will literally say, "Did Jake have fun today on the set?" And she's like, my mom will be like, "Well, I think he did. Ask Jake." And I'll be like, "Well, it was all right, but the director was, well, he was a prick," and Cindy will be like, "All right, we'll just keep that in mind for next time." And so if that casting director calls and it's the same director, we'll just be like, "No thanks." because it's just as much, you can only learn by trial and error when it comes to picking people out who are in the craft for the same reasons. You know, even when you're talking about commercials, if you don't have an idea, if it comes down to taste, and it comes down to things that you want your name on. You know, if you can't be with someone, if you get that hinky feeling when you shake someone's hand, you know, you probably shouldn't invite them to be like a business partner.
Trust your gut.
You know, trust your gut. You know, if you don't consider yourself well-rounded ever, because when people tell you that, great, take it as a compliment. It's awesome. It's nice to hear. But if you ever consider yourself well-rounded, what that means is you just poked a hole in it. Like, you know, you stopped considering yourself, you stopped being well-rounded because you're judging yourself. And people who place judgments on you, I suppose, is the best way to identify someone who isn't good to work with in the industry. People who are like, who show up and they go, well, I know this kid was Anakin Skywalker, so I'm going to meet him and I'm going to treat him like this. You know, if you go into it and you have preconceptions, and you can tell this person has preconceptions about you and is building their entire conversation with you based off of an interview they saw, they're probably a dipshit. Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
I think that's a great way to end this panel discussion. Actually, I think we're at 10:45, which means we need to start wrapping up. I want to thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yay, they were awesome.
Boop.